After more than 8 centuries of slumber, Rai, the most powerful noble, had sprung to consciousness again. The casket in which he was lying was stolen one night by a gang of individuals. They brought him to an abandoned structure, but he awoke abruptly upon the sight of the full moon. He went straight to work the following morning, searching for Frankenstein, his assistant who was in charge of his school at the time. He arrived to the school and saw Shinwo at the entrance, who was unable to enter due to his tardiness. Shinwo could not identify this individual, so he was wondering who he was. A little while later, the gates opened and the man vanished. Frankenstein opened his office door and knelt down to greet his master, sensing that he was already outside. They discussed Frankenstein's work as a school director at the moment. Rai chose to study here because, after all that sleep, he realized he had a lot to learn about the modern world. Shinwa abruptly got up because he recognized Caddy's Atromedy Rizzle when he identified himself as such when he walked into the classroom where he was assigned. Because their instructor assumed that the two of them were acquainted, Rai was instructed to sit next to him, which made the females gaze at Shinwa in envy. The two organization members arrived at the abandoned building in the meanwhile. They were supposed to take the casket. Their names were M21 and M24. The watchman infuriated them because the casket had vanished. In an attempt to ascertain the watchman's veracity, M24 discovered that he could recall a female witness. The woman may know where they might find what they were seeking for, so they utilized it to locate her. The females continued to stare at Rai, also known as Rizzle, even though he was in the canteen with Shinwu and Aiken. He tasted the ramen thanks to Shinwu, and it quickly became his favorite. Shinwu raced to the woman as soon as he heard her scream as they were traveling home. As soon as he arrived, he booted the monster that was going to assault Yuna, one of their classmates. They bolted from fear as the monster got up. But Rai sensed someone was hidden behind the wall. It turned out to be M21 and M24. They sensed right once that Rai was not like the other people because of this. After looking for the casket for a few days, they finally came upon Rai and his classmates. As they observed them, M21 was taken aback when Rai's gaze locked with his. Abruptly, two of their other co-workers, Jake and Marie, showed up with a plot to assassinate Shinwu after discovering their organization's secret. Shinwa's gang was taken aback when Jake unexpectedly showed up to them on the way home. M21 attacked them unexpectedly as well, and they instantly passed out. M21 claims that these kids had one additional classmate who they also needed to apprehend. Frankenstein received a text message from Shin Wu's cell phone, which Jake was using, while Ryan and Frankenstein were conversing. However, Shin Wu assaulted the monster to save their classmate just as it was ready to devour her. Then they bolted for their lives. Frankenstein and Rai made a hasty attempt to go to where Shin Wu and the others were hiding. They sensed Rai's classmates were in danger, even if the message was unclear. Shin Wu and his friends stepped inside the elevator, and Jake was fast to follow. When M24 arrived, Shin Wu was engaged in combat with Jake, but Shin Wu was just losing because of their disparity in power. M24 abruptly realized that Jake had previously also beaten their co-workers, and he became enraged and assaulted Jake. M21 discovered this as well right away, which is why Marie also assaulted him. Jake stood up and launched an assault on M24. Nevertheless, M24 was able to apprehend Jake, and he subsequently detonated himself. M21 was simply getting battered up as she and Marie went back and forth in the battle. Despite his offensive attempt, Marie managed to overcome him. As she was ready to kill in number 21, Frankenstein appeared out of nowhere to stop her. M21 had another odd feeling after seeing Wright. He was considering the possibility that Wright may at least assist in saving M24. Thus, he informed them right away of Shin W's whereabouts and his desire to face Marie once again. His strategy, however, was foiled when Wright gave the order for Frankenstein to battle Marie, instead of asking M21 to lead him to the location of Shin W and the others. Jake stood up once again a few minutes after the explosion and went over to Shinwu and his pals. However, M21 ran at Jake as soon as Rice appeared, but he was just being outmatched by his opponent. As Frankenstein and Marie were fighting, Marie made the decision to unleash her own power since she could sense Frankenstein's might. She continued to fight Frankenstein until Wright granted him permission to crack his seal, allowing him to unleash his real strength and vanquish his adversary. Marie was astounded by Frankenstein's ability to obey his orders and his strength. Marie was instantly vanquished when he attacked since she was powerless to defend herself. He came up to Rye after Jake had defeated him by 21. Because Rye was unable to look at him, he assumed that Rye was terrified of him. Rye abruptly forced him to kneel, saying that he could now gaze at him in that way. After seeing Rye's shocking actions, M21 assumed that Rye was the Noblesse, the person they had been searching for. After failing to get to his feet, Jake chose to change into a monster, since he was going through a difficult moment. Just as he was ready to strike, Rye forced him to kneel once again. In order to prevent Xin Wu and their classmates from seeing what was about to happen, Rye also put them to sleep. Jake attempted to assault once again, but Rye's powerful abilities prevented him from doing anything. Rye eventually killed Jake with his own blood. M21 was taken aback by what he saw, and Frankenstein also arrived. Following the fight, they invited M21 to their home to question him about his actual identity, as well as Jake and Marie's, and based on their shown abilities, it was only evident that they were also not your typical folks. M21 then disclosed that they belonged to a group known as the Union. They were both merely test subjects for Jake and Marie's assignment, along with M24. Given M21's betrayal of the organization, Frankenstein realized he had nowhere else to go, and that they would undoubtedly track him down and murder him. As a thank you for saving Xin Wu and the others, he invited M21 to remain at their home if he so desired. However, he had to pay for it since he needed employees to keep his school secure. The following day, M21 got to work. Rye erased Xin Wu's memories from the previous evening and added new ones. Suddenly, a few automobiles showed up at the school one day. When M21 arrived, he saw the intruders causing problems and threatening other students as they were searching for Xin Wu. He was hesitant to confront them until the elderly custodian arrived and attempted to plead with the miscreant to stop. He was ready to attack the elderly guy when Xinhua appeared out of nowhere and deflected the blow with his broken arm. As it turned out, this guy was envious of Xinhua because he believed the latter was making advances toward his girlfriend. Xinhua was continuously pummeled by it till he was struck in the face. Rai approached M21 and fixed his gaze on him, perhaps attempting to ascertain M21's course of action. Thus, M21 arrived to step in as the elderly guy spoke with the troublemaker once again. M21's immense power prevented the troublemaker from defending himself. Additionally, M21 threatened to keep him away. Regis and Sierra showed up to the school one day, just as M21 was going to close the gate. His eyes reminded him of Rai's, so when he and Regis exchanged glances, he felt uncomfortable. When he brought them to Frankenstein's office, the monster identified them by race right away. Regis used his Rai-like abilities to inform him that they wanted to study at the school since they were ignorant about Frankenstein. Regis believed that what he had done to Frankenstein was effective, and Frankenstein claimed to be under his influence and performed what Regis instructed in order for Regis to remain unaware of it. Frankenstein then told Rai about Regis and Sierra right away. Regis sensed the powerful energy surrounding Rai as soon as they were introduced to the class. Xinhua ate with them, as he was tasked with assisting the recently transferred pupils. Frankenstein found M21 waiting for him, just as he was ready to return home. They discussed the Noblesse, Sierra, and Regis while driving. M21 informed him that the Noblesse was being sought after by the Union Group. He discovered that its science was unable to account for its extraordinarily potent force. They didn't know anything more about the Noblesse because they were only low-level employees of the company. Frankenstein then told him all else he knew on Rai's race. They discovered Rai and the others munching on their food when they arrived home. As a result, Shinwa discovered that M21 resided there as well. Shinwa also mentioned that Regis and Sierra could probably stay in the home like M21 for the time being as they had nowhere else to stay. Rai saw nothing wrong with the proposal, therefore Frankenstein was powerless to stop it. A few hours later, Sierra was ready to come in to assist Frankenstein and M21 with the dishwashing. She saw M21's hand tattoo. She told Regis about it the moment she got home the following day. Among their altered human creatures, she thought it represented the Union organization. They sought to validate their hypothesis that M21 was connected to the loss of the casket and the findings they had found. Regis encountered M21 as he was ready to go for home in the afternoon. Regis questioned him about his motivation for interacting with others. Regis added that he did not like him since he gave up his humanity in order to get power, even though Regis was already aware that he was a modified human. Meanwhile, 4 men who were Shinwu's opponents encountered Rai and the others as they were making their way home. M21 learned that Regis was also searching for the casket while they spoke. Regis attempted to mind control M21 when he said that the coffin thief was no longer alive, but it proved unsuccessful. After a fight, Sierra abruptly spoke with Regis to let him know what was going on. Shinwa battled the men who assaulted him on his own. Regis got there with M21, and just as Regis was ready to step in, M21 intervened. The fact that Shinwa was just dominating his opponents startled him. M21 broke up the battle when an enemy brandished a gun, and the enemy quickly fled the scene. Conversely, the Union designated Krantz as the head of the A5, a special forces unit. Since M21 and M24 were the ones that assisted Jake and Marie in their mission, they made the decision to seek for them first in order to carry out Jake and Marie's mission from Tao's inquiry. A few days later, Tao received word of M21's whereabouts right away. Krantz decided to send Hammer and Shark to M21 as a result. Thus, M21 was approached by Shark and Hammer one evening as he was traveling home. When they offered him to accompany them, M21 declined right away. At that point, Shark made fun of M24, which infuriated M21, who then launched an attack on Shark. M21 lost the battle because she could not match Shark's speed. When Regis and Sierra showed up out of the blue, Regis ridiculed them since he knew they were also modified human sharks. Shark was so furious that he was unable to contain himself and lunged for Regis. However, M21 stepped in and caused further harm to Shark, who was also injured. Krantz appeared out of nowhere, and M21 knew who he was right away. Regis attempted to intervene as well, but M21 was compelled to accompany Krantz in order to keep the two out of the matter. M21 believed that this was his opportunity to discover more about their other mates who had similarities with them. Frankenstein also learned the truth about what had happened to M21 as soon as Regis and Sarah arrived home. Then he recalled once more what M21 had mentioned earlier regarding the Union and the casket hunt. Kran's group began receiving intelligence from M21 the next morning. M21 saw from their questioning style that they appeared to be unaware of his defection of the organization and likely believed he was still on a mission. So he made the decision to use it to his advantage in order to learn more. He promised them that in return for information about his colleagues, he would only discuss what he knew. Krantz, however, asserts that they were ignorant of any knowledge on the other individuals, including him. Krantz instructed Tao to hack the Union's experiment data as a result. In the afternoon, Tao inquired as to how Takeo joined the Union group. Tao was compelled to remain in the Union after learning that Takeo had a sister who was being held captive by the group alone in this location. A hacker gained access to the security system Aiken was fixing one night, while he was working on it at his uncle's request. Tao was found to be responsible, and as a result of Aiken's challenge, he made it difficult for him to obtain the information. Up until Shinwo unintentionally pulled the laptop's cable, Tao was therefore taken aback to see that his rival had halted. They connected with one other at that point, so they made the decision to meet one day. When Shinwo and Sierra spotted Takeo that same day, the two guys approached them and demanded money. It was then that they met, when Shinwo went to help Takeo. Shark was impatient one night for the information they desired, but M21 remained silent since he had not received the information he had requested. In the little time that Tao was inside, Takeo foiled Shark's scheme. This infuriated Shark, so he revealed that on their earlier missions, he had also killed the people Takeo had saved. Additionally, he raised the possibility that his sister had been killed by the organization, which infuriated Takeo and caused him to point a pistol at Shark. Tao intervened to break up the fight. Regis discovered Shark and Hammer were the people observing him from the top of the building one day as he was making his way home. He then turned to confront these men in the square after leaving Shinwo and Aiken. After fighting, Shark came to the conclusion that Regis was not your typical guy and should not be taken lightly. Shark ingested a medication that caused physical changes. Shark gained strength and speed as their fight went on. But Regis also revealed his real nature and struck Shark from behind, which Shark was unable to dodge because to Regis' incredible speed. Regis, however, abruptly halted upon realizing that Aiken and Shinwo were asleep next to Hammer. He was forced to comply with their request as a result. M21 therefore noticed Regis and the others, who remained asleep, when they returned to their hiding place. From the moment Sirit connected with Regis mentally, she knew something had happened to him. He informed Frankenstein about Regis, and she promptly set out to locate him. Frankenstein believed that Shinwu and Aiken were also in danger, since he was aware that Regis was traveling home with them. As soon as Sirit discovered Regis' whereabouts, Ryan Frankenstein followed suit. To be continued. Shinwu and Aiken were shocked to see Tao and Takeo there as well when they woke up. They also observed M21 when Shark kicked Aiken. They questioned him about his presence when Shark informed them that he was also the reason they were abducted. But M21 refused to respond to Shinwu and Aiken. Shark tried to assault Aiken since M21 was still not providing the information they were requesting, but Regis stopped him right away, and it was Regis who was beaten by Shark. Hammer declared he would grab food first after finishing his carton of chicken. As he was going back after getting the dinner, he noticed Sierra coming inside. She was not an average person, and that's why he stopped her. After Hammer used his bombs, the walls fell on him, trapping him in the fight. Sierra went into a warehouse and kept searching for Regis. Hammer reappeared, stronger than ever from his drug use. They struggled once again, but he was unable to even strike Sierra. With a single blow, Sierra dispatched him using her death scythe. Takeo was waiting for Ryan Frankenstein when they arrived at the building. Frankenstein turned to face Takeo, telling Rai to find the others. After some time, Takeo used the medication as well in order to bolster his strength and keep up with Frankenstein. Frankenstein could not readily repel the enemy since he had not yet granted permission to unleash his ultimate might. With a rifle aimed behind his head, Takeo threatened to murder Rai as well. Frankenstein was able to unleash his true might since this infuriated him so much. Takeo sustained injuries as a result of being unable to evade Frankenstein's swift and powerful assaults. Despite his greatest efforts, he was unable to overcome Frankenstein. Just when Frankenstein was going to murder him, Sierra arrived. Takeo suddenly pleaded with her to save Shinwo and the others. Frankenstein changed his mind and allowed him to live since he cared about their friends. M21 was obliged to assault Shark because he could no longer stand the way Shark was beating Shinwu. Even though he realized he couldn't compete with Shark, he nonetheless took all of the blows to defend the others. Regis was now free to remove his restraints and launch an assault against his adversary. Shark used the medication as well and gained strength, but he was still unable to equal Regis' strength. Suddenly, Krantz showed up and strengthened himself with the same medicine. They mistook him for someone who would support Shark throughout the battle until he unexpectedly hit Shark in the stomach. Krantz informed them that the purpose of the medicine was not to enhance his partner's strength. Rather, It was designed to allow him to absorb their strength as they used it, making him even more powerful. Regis charged toward Shark once he had absorbed all of his strength, but Regis was moving too quickly to even get a shot off. Regis unleashed one of his most powerful blows, but Krantz escaped unscathed. With such force, he hit Regis till he lost consciousness. Thankfully, Rai arrived and Krantz questioned him about whether or not he had engaged in combat with his allies. Krantz was met by a powerful force that caused him to bow rather than an answer. After releasing himself from this power, he launched an assault, but Rai parried it. Rai just had to say one word to push Krantz aside with tremendous power. Tao was given the instruction by Krantz to utilize the medication in order to absorb Rai's strength and beat him. Aiken attempted to persuade Krantz not to obey Tao's command as Tao was getting closer to him. Aiken infuriated Krantz, who then threatened to murder him if he didn't absorb the might of Tao. After hearing those remarks, Tao decided to assault Krantz instead. However, Krantz swiftly seized him, and just as he was ready to hit Tao, Rai intervened, stiffening him up, allowing Tao to flee. Blood appeared just as Rai was about to strike. Regis was taken aback at witnessing this, since only a select few have the power to manipulate blood, also known as the blood field. Krantz kept attacking, but his life was taken because he was stuck in blood. When Takeo woke up at Frankenstein's home, he noticed Shinwoo and Aiken there as well as 21. M21 felt quite weak one night as she pondered about the incident. In addition to not learning anything about his former co-workers, he endangered Shinwoo and other people. Rai arrived and informed M21 that he was not weak as he sensed the immense strength within him. He attempted to use M21's blood to release its true power. Subsequently, M21 had an unexplained physical sensation and abruptly altered his look. It vanished in an instant after a few seconds, and Rai informed him that this was his actual shape. Takeo and Tao conversed about what Krantz had done to Shark, and how they were considered as helpful instruments to enhance Krantz's power. M21 overheard their talk when Takeo inquired about their possibility of leaving the Union. Peeking into the organization's server, Tao discovered from the log that they had both died as a result of the assignment. However, Takeo was concerned about his brother, who was still under the organization's control. At this point, Tao came clean to Takeo about the fact that he didn't have a brother. Tao said that he searched the organization's server for information about his sister, but was informed that it was a phony record, and that the hospital where his sibling was being housed did not exist. Tao went on to say that the group had just tricked his memory. They both made the decision to leave the residence the next day since they didn't want to continue being a burden. Tao informed M21 before he left that he attempted to obtain the information about his co-workers, but the company erased the records. He even made an attempt to extract the files, but it was unsuccessful. M21 stopped them as they were ready to depart and pleaded with Frankenstein to allow the two to remain at their house. In response, he said that everything would be okay if Rai agreed. Frankenstein chose to designate them as the school's guardians as a result. They made the decision one day to alter Shinwoo and Aiken's recollections of the earlier conflict. Frankenstein informed the two of the plan when they got to the residence. After the struggle with Jake and Mori, Frankenstein acknowledged that they had previously accomplished this, which shocked Shinwoo. Shinwoo was unable to accept them as they were already aware of the unusual nature of every person living there. Furthermore, he gave them the assurance that no one would find out about this. In addition to making sure that others wouldn't know that there were animals like them, Regis said that this was also for their safety. M21 went on to say that while this was comparable to what the organization had done to them, the individual who had observed their powers and the rest of their family were the ones who were erased from memory. That was the worst part about the organization. Ultimately, Shinwoo and Aiken were forced to allow Rai to obliterate their memories. One day, Frankenstein and Rai sensed the presence of a person of the same race who had entered the school. M21 and others approached him assuming he was just a parent of a student because they didn't know him. To the amazement of all three, This old guy suddenly displayed his genuine aura. Regis and Sierra went straight to meet this elderly guy, named Jejidal, who turned out to be the leader of their clan. Jejidal was taken aback when Frankenstein also appeared since he was unable of sensing his presence. Conversely, Corias, Rosaria, Rajuk, Ludes, Kay, and other leaders of the various clans were greeted by Raskria, the current head of the nobility. They discussed the news that they had located the coffin's owner, as well as Jejidal's departure. However, they all viewed Rai as a betrayer. Jejidal was brought inside Frankenstein's home. Rai was considered a traitor by the other nobles, but Jejidal still had great regard for him because he was one of their race's elite nobility. Rai claimed to have known the nobility were searching for him ever before Regis and Sierra showed here. Jejidal also updated him on the developments in their kingdom, Lucadonia, where Raskria, his daughter, has taken over as leader following the death of the previous one. Raskria saw Rai as a traitor since she said he was the reason behind her father's demise. Jejidal desired for Rai to accompany him to Lucadonia in order to establish his innocence. Rai declined, telling him that for the time being he preferred to remain among humans. Regis and a few others discussed the school incident. After he informed them about the nobles' races, Tao wanted to know how Frankenstein was related to them. Regis was taken aback to learn that Jejudo and Frankenstein were acquainted. They even acknowledged that Frankenstein's identity piqued their interest more than Rai's. Before he met Rai, Frankenstein had a reputation as a noble hunter. Because he murdered so many aristocrats, he was dubbed the Noble Hunter. This prompted Raskria's father, the existing leader at the moment, to receive visits from other clan heads. They provided their boss with some knowledge on Frankenstein along with Arger. They claimed that Frankenstein was only a person, but they were unable to determine where its strength came from. Their boss requested that they bring Frankenstein so that he may speak with him after learning this information. The lords then embarked on their mission to apprehend Frankenstein. Arger utilized his soul weapon to begin fighting Frankenstein, while his opponent used his dark spear. Frankenstein revealed to Rigger why he detested the nobility during their battle. He said that the nobility was using their position of authority to control people. Frankenstein's strength expanded until he could no longer control it, and it began to take over his body. Gadgetal and his friend attacked Frankenstein with their only weapon at this rate. Frankenstein was hurt during the attack, but he managed to get away. It was at a mansion where he first encountered Rai. Rai did not trust him when he claimed to be a new servant since he was the mansion's owner. Abruptly, he was informed by Gadgetal and Rigger that they were going to capture Frankenstein and take him to their commander. However, they were taken aback when Rai simultaneously changed his clothes and revealed to the two that Frankenstein was his servant. Even more, Rai instructed Gadgetal to inform their master that he had forbidden them from bringing Frankenstein. So when Rai told them that, they departed. Frankenstein had been living at Rai's estate for 5 years. When Jejidal informed him, he still didn't trust him. He went on to say that because he had previously killed other nobility, staying at the home was perilous. Rai was persuaded by Jejidal to bring Frankenstein to their commander, implying that if he followed, the other nobles could have a different opinion of him. Frankenstein accepted an offer to see the head of the nobility one day. When they discussed Rai, the leader said that he was envious of him since he was with him. Rai refused to accept his repeated offers to move out of the mansion and live with him. The leader also spoke about Rai's significance to their race and how crucial he was to his leadership and the defense of the nobility. Without Rai, he continued, he was just a decoration on the throne. Ultimately, the leader trusted Frankenstein to look over Rai and loved him as well. However, the majority of the nobility disapproved of their leader's choice. The leader suggested that the blood contract may have been struck by Rai and Frankenstein. A clan elder by the name of Urikai said that staying with Rai with Frankenstein was risky. Jejudo went on to say that not all nobility saw Rai as an ally, even those who revered him as a deity. Although it still depends on whether they both desire to carry out the blood contract, the leader stated that he did not want to stand in the way of Rai's happiness. Frankenstein made a second appearance since the commander assigned him the role of messenger in case he needed to communicate with Rai. Upon seeing Jejudo, he warned Frankenstein once more that keeping Rai's life in the mansion hinged on him not stirring up problems. When Urukai arrived, he challenged Frankenstein to a duel. Once Frankenstein agreed, they got right to work. Frankenstein initially used his black spear in an attempt to match Urukai's strength. Rieger saw that Frankenstein was resisting the need to wield the black spear, fearing that he could lose control of it. Frankenstein had infuriated Urukai. It seemed inconceivable to him that Rai would get into a blood covenant with someone like Frankenstein. The fact that they, as nobility, were forbidden from even approaching Rai felt unjust. He went on to say that neither he nor Rai needed each other. Frankenstein became enraged at hearing this, as Urukai was unaware of Rai Trolley's emotions. He lost control of his fury and unleashed his powerful strength, which engulfed him. After Urukai had an eye injury during their battle, Jejudo and Ragger interfered to break up the brawl. Rai and their captain came just as Frankenstein was about to launch another attack. Rai went up to Frankenstein, but Frankenstein attacked Rai. By employing the blood field, he foiled Frankenstein's subsequent assault. That's when he signed the blood covenant with Frankenstein, which helped him lose consciousness and calm down. Frankenstein was at the home when he woke up and went straight to Rai. When Rai requested for tea, Frankenstein fulfilled their blood bargain by adding his own blood to the tea, allowing Rai to consume it and signifying his acceptance of the deal. Right now, Jejul expressed to Frankenstein his desire to have broken his blood covenant with Rai. He continued by saying that it would be good if Rai accompanied him back to Locadonia, and that Rai could relocate there if he could establish his innocence as the prior leader's killer. Frankenstein, however, retorted that Rai did not desire this. Rai was already content with his life and the people in it. A few hours later, Jejul bid farewell and headed back to Lucadonia. He desired for Regis and Sierra to remain there and lead fulfilling lives. He spoke lies to Raskria and other clan chiefs when he got to Lucadonia. According to him, Regis and Kira provided inaccurate information. Since it was difficult for Raskria to read Jejudol's memories, she chose to read Kira's instead, considering Kira was also a clan chief. Rujuk was given the order to lock up Jejudol and collect Kira. Suddenly, Rujuk's brother Ariel showed up and offered to go get Kira. Raskria decided that he should do it, so he could see Kira since he liked her so much. R.A.L. He headed straight to school and began his mission. He used his strength, which Rai and the others sensed right away. Upon exiting the building, he saw the trio of guards and proceeded to assault N21. After arriving, Regis and Sierra questioned R.A.L. why he was in that place. However, R.A.L. was simply conversing with Sierra when he abruptly struck Regis out of annoyance. He also freed Regis at Sierra's instruction, asking Sierra to accompany him to Lucadonia. Although Ariel obeyed her orders right away, Sierra rejected it and sent him away, promising that he would come back. They discussed what transpired at school at home. Regis informed Ryan Frankenstein that Ariel desired to return Sierra to Lucadonia. When Rujuk locked him up and wrecked Sierra's apartment because she refused to be his girlfriend, they did not anticipate that he had been freed. Frankenstein inquired about M21's status after examining Takeo and Tao's corpses. Frankenstein assured them that his wounds were mending quickly and he would soon be well. Frankenstein reasoned that it may be because Rai had just revealed the full extent of M21's capabilities. The fact that they were powerless to stop Ariel's attack on M21 left the two feeling guilty about what had happened to him. They both pleaded with Frankenstein to give them strength because of this. They knew that Frankenstein was capable of doing this to them since they had access to his knowledge and facilities. Sierra and Regis discuss R.A.L. and his actions, which Regis found unacceptable. Regis was aware that one of his motivations for wanting Sierra was that he was the next in line for the clan leadership, and he believed that since Sierra was the current head of their clan, he would also be eligible to succeed Sierra in that role. Sierra encouraged Regis to go to sleep and not to worry about her since she recalled what Ariel had said before he left that day. Rye sensed Sierra's departure from the house. Frankenstein said he would take care of it and was waiting outside as Rye got ready to follow Sierra. He allowed Frankenstein to break the seal containing his power before he went. Sierra walked up to Rael and asked him what he meant when he said he didn't want her to be depressed. Rael claimed that all he wanted was for his emotions to motivate Sierra to act. In addition, he urged Sierra to stay away from Regis and those repulsive individuals. Sierra told him up front that she would not be leaving her life with these people to follow him since she did not agree with what Rael had said about the people. Angrily, Rael was assaulted by Frankenstein out of nowhere. When they battled, Rael was taken aback by Frankenstein's quickness because he was unfamiliar with him, at least until the blow hurt him. At that point, he made the decision to brand Grandia, his only weapon, into action. He possessed his own lone weapon, even though he was not yet a clan head. He hurt Frankenstein right away when he assaulted him, but Frankenstein merely laughed it off. That's when Frankenstein brandished his black spear once again. They persisted in their fight, and Frankenstein's home shook from the intensity of their blows. When Regis arrived, Sierra pleaded with him to intervene and put an end to their altercation. She ordered Ariel to go once they completed this. However, Ariel demonstrated to them that their captain had given the order, which prompted Regis and Sierra to kneel right away. In addition to telling them about Jejudo's illness, Ariel forbade Regis from returning to Lucadonia. Frankenstein came back inside the home and informed Rye right once about Sierra's return order from the noble chief, as well as about Jejudo's current predicament in Lucadonia. He suspected that Jejudo had lied to the leader about Rye. Rye made the decision to go back to Lucadonia as a result. Rascria questioned Ariel right away whether it was true that she and Sierra had met Rye when they got to Lucadonia. Since Sierra would not talk, she used her influence to get the truth. Ariel informed Rascria that he had only encountered strong individuals and had not encountered any nobles due to his sympathy for Sierra's situation. Rascria ceased her treatment of Kira when Korea spoke. In addition to telling Koreas to lock Kira up, Rascria reportedly gave Rudjuk instructions to question Jejul once again. Rye, Frankenstein, and Regis, meantime, began their journey toward Locadonia. Frankenstein, however, gave the three a medication he dubbed T2 to increase their powers before they departed. While he was out with Rye, he stated they may use it in case the Union people attacked again. The other clan heads discussed the incarceration of Sierra and Jejudo. Given that they couldn't possibly betray Rascria, they questioned why they weren't conversing. Abruptly, someone arrived to tell them that a human plane had crashed on the coast close to Lucadonia. Only the plane's wreckage was discovered there, and it was unknown who was inside. Rye's entourage was already making their way to his residence. Rye sensed an aura while entering the home, and Frankenstein instructed Regis to remain downstairs. They beheld Ragnarok, the leader's soul weapon, as Rye unlocked the door. Regis went to check on the aristocrats he felt could be in the woodland next to the estate. He battled them, but there were so many of them that he was unable to control the situation, and they encircled him. All of a sudden, several of them heard someone speak and were struck by bullets. They identified themselves as RK4, but in reality, they were M21 Tau and Takeo. Regis was shocked to learn that they had also beaten the aristocrats in Lucadonia after they did so rapidly. Upon returning home, they told Frankenstein they had come to Lucadonia with the intention of being of assistance. The four were informed by Frankenstein that Jejudo and Sierra might not be in a favorable condition, and that they required assistance. According to Rye, there was a good chance that the two were attempting to shield him from harm. After confessing that he was the noble they had been searching for, he was charged with the old leader's murder. M21 queried if Rye shared Regis' status as a noblesse. In response, Frankenstein said that it was both incorrect and correct. He made it clear that the noblesse did not refer to a caste of nobles. The Noblesse was a monster unlike any other. It was unparalleled. And this noblewoman was none other than Catus Atroma de Razel, also referred to as Rye. Upon hearing everything that Frankenstein had to say, they made the decision to back Rye. Regis claimed their clan head gave Rye his whole backing since he decided to shield him. Rye made the decision to go to the castle's refuge. Regis fought the Central Order of Knights in the Forbidden Region, and Ludis provided Raskria with intelligence and verified that Rye's squad was, in fact, on board the down jet. Raskria instructed Ludis to give the order for the soldiers to withdraw, because Rye's residence was located in the Forbidden Region, and they were unable to stop Rye. However, Raskria saw Regis' actions as evidence that Jejidal had betrayed her, and as a result, she felt compelled to sentence him to an eternity of forced slumber. Since Jejidal took care of practically all of the clan chiefs, the leaders were taken aback by Raskria's choice and disapproved of it. Raskria made the decision to let Jejidal make his own decisions as a result. As she traveled to Jejidal, she thought back to the time when she had overheard her father ask Rye if he wanted to lead the nobility. She was unable to accept the fact that her father still favored Rye above her in spite of her best attempts. She told Jejudo about Rye's return to Locadonia when she got to his incarceration. She forced him to decide between accepting his sentence and telling the truth about how he had met Rye. Raskria became further angrier when Jejudo urged her to punish him with forced perpetual sleep despite being compelled to admit that he and Rye had met. Declaring his decision on Jejudo, Raskria gave the order for Rajak and Koryas to launch an assault on Rye's force. Upon hearing the troops discussing Raskria's decision over Jejudo, Sierra abruptly used her soul weapon to smash through the fence. Regis and M21 proceeded to act as bait to draw the guards away, while Rye began to move toward the refuge. Takeo and Tao were just behind them to cover for them while they were there. Our owl unexpectedly ran across Regis, and he informed him about Jejudo's penalty. Regis was still in disbelief at what he had heard. A.L. hurried forward, but M21 assaulted him, causing him to back off. Subsequently, M21 instructed Regis to go, promising to take care of R.A.L. Regis was spotted by Carius and Rajek a little while after. Rajek turned to follow him, but Carius intervened, telling him that he would be the one to look after him. Takeo and Tao were only a shadow in the distance, aiming for R, while M21 kept fighting. A.L. prior to R.A.L. stumbled into their trap, and they detonated it with Takeo's gun shots. However, R.A.L. brought out his only weapon, which Frankenstein and Rye could also see. As they prepare to move on, Rye realizes that Frankenstein has his sights set on M21. It was difficult for M21 to stay up with his opponent, and R.A.L. could easily avoid Takeo's gunfire. They engaged in combat with R.A.L. close, but they were unable to match his might. Frankenstein and Rajak both appeared out of nowhere, charging at one another. R.A.L. Frankenstein was able to stop the attack on M21, but the blow from Rajak hurt him. Rajak hurt himself as a result, as he knew Frankenstein would have resisted his attack if R.A.L. had not stepped in. As their fight went on, Ral noticed that Rajak was having trouble, so he advised Rajak to combine their soul weapons. It found out that this was a component of Rieger, their father, and the previous clan leader's original soul weapon. Rajak turned it down because he thought their father had a purpose for splitting his soul sword in two. Rather than leaving it to Rajak as the future clan head, Rieger decided to split it so that Ral may also possess it. Regis turned to face Koryas, who ordered him to leave Lucadonia for the time being and return when all was well. Regis declined, and much like their tribe chief, he would bear the consequences of his refusal. Koryas then said that he would have to go through him in order to get to the castle. Regis began to charge at Koryas, but their disparity in power prevented him from hitting him, and as a result, Regis was the only one defeated in their duel, until his injuries became too much for him to bear. Rosaria interrupted Kira and instructed her to return to her jail as she was ready to go halt Jejul's punishment. Rosaria attacked Kira when she refused, and Kira responded against her right away. With their soul weapons drawn, they engaged in combat. Kira was one of the clan chiefs, but she was still unable to match Rosaria's might. Raja chose to punish Jeju with perpetual slumber after calling Rosaria by surprise and bringing Sierra along as a result of Sierra escaping her captivity to save Jeju. Sierra and Rai, Jeju said, had done nothing wrong. He also disclosed to other clan chiefs what he believed to be one of Raskriya's main grievances against Rai. According to him, the outgoing leader extended an invitation to Rai to succeed him as leader. The clan chiefs expressed amazement at what they heard, and Jejudal pointed out that Raskriya made no attempt to ascertain Rai's and the former leader's genuine emotions. She never even found out why Rai turned down the chance to take the kingdom from the prior leader, or why he hesitated to give it to her. He went on to say that Raskriya allowed her feelings to consume her, and that if Lucadonia was always like this, nothing would be accomplished. Honoring Raskriya, the clan leaders disagreed with Jejudal. Taking out Ragnarok, the soul weapon, Raskriya went up to Jejudal. Rice arrived out of nowhere before she could administer the punishment. When he declared that he would not permit her to force Jejudal into an unending slumber, Kay blocked him right away. Kay kept attacking, but Rice didn't even bother to react. Rosaria began to assault as well, but it was ineffective. Ludis also assisted in blocking Rai's attack when he returned Rosaria's blows. However, Rai was the only one who could neutralize his strike. With a long, deliberate movement, Rai brought them to their knees. Sierra believed that a clan chief could only be subdued by a leader. Jaju then said that the Noblesse was more strong, even though the leader was higher than all of them. The other nobles sensed Raskriya's aura as soon as she moved to confront Rai, and they promptly made their way back to the castle, followed by Frankenstein. Rai remained unharmed by Raskriya's repeated attacks. At that moment, Rai effortlessly demolished Raskriya's blood field, despite her using it. Raskriya had 3 clan chiefs standing in front of her, guarding her, attacking Rai at the same time. They were unable to even make contact with him. After Rai utilized his blood field, Raskriya approached him and used her own blood field to block Rai's strike, hitting him in the process. They both grew weaker, and Frankenstein appeared to back Rai as well. Rai moved closer to Raskriya and pulled out a second Ragnarok. As soon as it united on Raskriya's Ragnarok, his father, the previous leader, appears. He told Raskriya that he was aware that his ordeal had led to unrest in Lucadonia. He gave an explanation for his decision to subject himself to an endless state of slumber. Although he acknowledged that the nobility could live indefinitely if they so choose, he felt that something was still lacking. They were discovering a means to live longer and become even stronger than others who were weaker than the nobility and merely had a shorter lifetime. He believed that the aristocracy lacked this kind of progress. He thus reasoned that perhaps it was time for the noble race to change. He discussed his ideas with top authorities and clan chiefs he trusted. He informed them that he offered to carry out the eternal sleep in order to hand over control over Lucadonia's destiny to the coming generation. Many others, he said, chose to follow his idea, but he forbade Jejudal from doing so in order to mentor the coming generation. The heads of the tribe questioned why Jejudal had not informed them earlier. Jejudal retorted that they were more confused than he had anticipated about the new clan leaders' acceptance of their tasks because of the abrupt occurrence with their chief and other clan leaders. Additionally, Raskriya, the incoming leader, is included in this. As a result, someone seized the chance to disseminate inaccurate information and hold Rai responsible for everything. He remained silent because he believed that this would be best for Lucadonia, and could see that the clan elders were banding together to support Raskriya. He was prepared for the punishment that would be meted out to him because of his wrongdoing. Suddenly, Koreas arrived and tossed Regis. In exchange for Raskriya punishing their clan chief for his transgression, Regis urged her to punish him as well. Regis's actions impressed Koreas and Rajak. Since they were the ones that followed the leader and the noble race, they feel that potential future clan leaders shouldn't be penalized. Graskria was begged by all the clan heads for this reason. Handcuffs on Jajudo and Sarah were broken by Raskria as she approached. Additionally, she leaned on Jajudo at the same moment. Without saying anything to Raskria, the former leader apologized for his abrupt absence before bidding her farewell. Raskria welcomed Ragnarok's unification right away. Frankenstein told them everything was prepared for their return to Japan once they had healed from their wounds. Because they were allowed to finish their education, Regis and Sierra would also follow. Regarding Rai's circumstances, he was still awaiting his verdict. Rai was standing where he usually talked to the old leader when Raskria came up to him. She wanted to know what he thought about her father. Rai recalled the discussion he had on his offer to take the kingdom in lieu of the previous emperor. Until Rai was ready to take the lead as the head of the nobility, he wanted her to serve as an example for Raskria. Rai said that all he saw was a loving and proud parent. Rai's words caused Raskria to burst out laughing. Rai made the decision to travel back to the human realm with Frankenstein.